My name is Mike Rocca. I work with the Florida Department of Transportation in the Production Support Office. My role here is CAD application and support for the FDOT Civil 3D State Kit. And today's webinar, we're going to be talking about plan production drainage sections in Civil 3D. I do understand that the topic that was sent out was drainage sections and profiles in Civil 3D, but I decided that 1 hour wasn't enough time to efficiently cover cross sections and profiles. So what I did is I broke it down in half, and we're just going to talk about drainage sections today, and then I'll send out another invite that will cover plan and profiles. Before we get started, I just want to make a couple announcements. We have an FDOT Civil 3D training channel on YouTube. As you can see here on the screen, there's a link that you can type in to go to that link, or when you download the PDF, there is a link that you can just click on that will take you directly to the YouTube channel link itself. And in there we have some just some general Autodesk training videos. We have some FDOT Autodesk quick clips, and we also take these webinars that we do and post them on the channel itself. Also, when you're on the channel, YouTube channel, don't forget to click on the official FDOT link to subscribe so that you'll get all of updates on when new content is posted to the channel. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this session for drainage sections and FDOT Civil 3D State Kit. What we're going to do today is we're going to cover what is necessary for creating FDOT Civil 3D sections using a proposed drainage network and a corridor drawing. And what we're going to do is just demonstrate or look at what objects are required in your drawing before you can create cross sections. We'll look at bringing data references into your file like alignments. We'll create sample lines, section views, and pipe networks. As far as the software prerequisites for this webinar, just have the most current or latest version of the Civil 3D State Kit installed. And this is just to ensure that you have our latest standards and styles that are out that are specific to FDOT roadway modeling, and also to ensure that you have a lot of the styles and settings that we're going to be looking at today in this webinar. And just as far as user prerequisites, just have a good understanding how AutoCAD works and a basic understanding of Autodesk Civil 3D. And I think after this session's over with, you will see how easy it is to generate cross sections in Civil 3D. So with that being said, the order of tasks that we're going to go through today, we'll look at the requirements of creating a cross drawing using the Create Drawing application and the State Kit. And then once we do that, we'll reference in an alignment and then start creating our sample lines. As far as sample lines go, we're going to examine different ways to create sample lines and then manipulate sample lines once you have them in your drawing. We'll also take a look at taking a polyline and converting those into sample lines as well. For example, like if you might want to have a sample line that goes through a network structure, we're going to be using the polylines to do that with. Once you have the sample lines created, we're going to look at creating a cross-section view and creating multiple views. We'll look at a couple of ways of doing that. And then we'll add a drainage pipe network to our cross-sections using a pipe network that's in a source file. We're going to take it and put it in our data shortcuts and then share that data shortcut pipe network into our cross-section file. And then we'll look at labeling cross-section views using the annotation tools that are in this Civil 3D State Kit. And then last but not least, we'll take those cross-sections and we will generate them into sheets and then take those sheets and put them in the sheet set manager. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this PowerPoint slide here. And the first thing we want to do is to fire up the FDOT Civil 3D State Kit. We're currently using right now is 2016. So I'm going to double click on the icon to bring it up. And then once it comes up, the first thing we want to do is we want to create a new file or new drawing. So to do that, I'm going to go up here to the top. I'm going to go to the far right-hand corner and click on the FDOT ribbon. And we're going to use the Create File tool. And the Create File tool, just make sure that you have your project set. If you already have your data shortcut set over here, it will read the data shortcut setting, and this should already be set up for you. If not, you'll get a warning message letting you know that these two here are not set to the same, but for the most part, this should be done for you. For the discipline that we're going to be working in the roadway discipline and the file group, you want to make sure that you have drainage design file selected. And then we're going to go down our list here, and we're going to choose the drainage structure cross sections option. When you pick that, you'll notice down here on the bottom that for our output file, we have a DRXSRD01, and that just means drainage cross sections road 01. It's going to place this in the drainage folder in your project directory, and it's using the FDOT as the template file to create this new file from. Okay. I just like to point out that you can assign a coordinate system from here. For cross sections, this is optional. It's not something you have to do, but I think it's always a good habit to go ahead and create coordinate systems whenever you create new drawings. So the next step would be just to go ahead and select the Create and Open icon, and then give Civil 3D a few seconds here to generate that drawing. And then when it's done, we're going to click on the Close. All right, so with the drawing created, I'm going to go ahead and click Close. And the next thing I want to do is I want to associate this drawing to the project that we're working in, so that when next time I open up this drawing, the data shortcuts will automatically point to the correct project for me. So to do that, it's very simple. Just select the data shortcuts link here. We're going to right click on it, and we're going to say Associate Project to Current Drawing. And it's going to look in the working folder, and it's going to show all the projects that are in that folder. So you might have to click on the down arrow to make sure you have the right project selected, and then click OK. And then once you do that, up on top, you'll notice that in brackets is your project number. That's the sure sign indicator that you have this drawing associated to a project. So I'm going to go here and click Save one more time. And the first thing we want to bring in is an alignment, because you cannot create sample lines unless you have an alignment in your drawing. An alignment is used to tell the sample lines where to travel along for your cross sections. In fact, you cannot even execute the Create Sample Lines command without an alignment. So here I'm just going to create a reference to a few of them by selecting the alignment, right-clicking, and choosing Create Reference. And in the Create Reference dialog box, we just kind of go down the list here. This is my baseline 817 alignment. The style for that is proposed, and our label set, we're going to use a truncated scale of 1 inch equals 40. Okay, and that's the same annotation scale that I have set down here on the bottom. So I'm going to click OK to that, and then to get the alignment viewable in your drawing, just double click on the wheel of your mouse, and that actually performs a zoom extents, and then we can zoom in here and see that we do have an alignment and we do have some labels on it. And let's go ahead and make a reference to 2 more alignments. So I'm going to choose the PGL left alignment, create a reference to it. I'm going to go down my list here, and for my alignment style, we have a PGL left alignment style that you can use. And we actually don't need any labels for this alignment, so I'm going to choose no labels, and then click OK. And you'll see we have a blue line for our PGL left. And then I'm going to choose the PGL right alignment, right-click, create reference. And then my alignment style is going to be PGL right for that. And then my alignment label set, we're going to choose no labels for that as well. And then click OK. And let that come in, and we should see a yellow line. All right, next thing I want to do is create some X-refs to a few drawings. Before we do that, we want to make sure that we have the correct layers set. So on the Home ribbon, under the Layers panel, I'm going to click on the down arrow, and if I press X on the keyboard, that'll filter down to my X-refs 01 DP layer. I can just click on that, and that'll set that layer current. Now if I go into the Insert ribbon, and under the Reference panel, click on this little arrow on the bottom right, and that should bring up my XREF Manager. When the XREF Manager comes up on the top left-hand corner here, I'm going to click on the down arrow, and we're going to attach a drawing. First of all, what I want to do is browse to my project. So let me go down here to Webinars, and then Data. And I want to create a shortcut to this. I already have one created, but I'm going to go ahead and remove that one and show you how to create a new one. Just take that project folder, left click on it and drag it to this shortcut area. So the next time you need to go to this folder, you just have to click on this and this will take you straight to that project. So I'm going to go to my list here and we're going to go to the roadway folder. And we're going to attach the design folder, DSGNRD01 drawing. Click open. And in the attach external reference box, make sure that everything is unchecked. As far as a reference type, whether it's an attachment or an overlay, for cross sections, and in this example, it really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to leave overlay selected and click OK. And then our most important file that we're going to attach is our corridor file. So I'm going to select Open Attach Drawing, and I'm going to attach the corridor State Route 7 drawing. The reason why I say that's the most important file is because that file there actually has our 3D model in it that we're going to show in our cross sections, and it also has our finished grade surface in it and our existing grade surface in it. And since that file has those type of objects in it, that will keep us from having to create data shortcuts for those objects. Sample lines can look through an X-ref drawing and see those objects in it for our cross sections, which you'll see in an example here in a little bit. Again, for reference type, I'm just going to leave it at overlay. Always make sure that everything is unchecked. We don't want to change the scale or the rotation or the insertion point of anything. Go ahead and click OK. It does take a couple more seconds for that drawing to load up in the background because it does have a corridor file in it. So when you're attaching that file, you do have to kind of wait a little bit. But actually, it's already up. So let's go ahead and close out of the XREF Manager. And let's zoom in here and let's see what we have. So we can see here we have two files laying on top of each other. If I pick this object, that is my design drawing. And if I hit Escape and click on the corridor, you can see the corridor highlights along with the border for the surfaces as well. So I think that's about all we need for creating cross sections. We just need a new drawing, an alignment, and we brought in a design file, and then we brought in our corridor file. Okay, so from there, our next step is to go to the Home tab and let's create our sample lines. To find sample lines, you're going to find those on the Profile and Section Views panel. So everything you need to create sample lines and section views is going to be right here in this little area. The first step you want to do is create sample lines. When you click on that, you'll notice at the command line that it's telling you to select an alignment, or you can press Enter or press the Enter key and pick from a list. I always like to pick from a list. So I'm going to press Enter, and I'm going to pick the PGL right alignment. The reason why I'm picking that alignment is because it's the same alignment that I used when I created the corridor. Okay, and in a minute I'll show you what the benefit to that is. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I get a Create Sample Lines dialog box. So before I can even create sample lines, I'm going to create a sample line group. Now the first thing on the top left-hand corner is you'll notice that it wants to give that group a name. So it says SLG for Sample Line Group, and it's going to associate the parent alignment name in that name. Okay, so what I like to do is kind of clean this up a little bit and take out the counter portion. And if you want to see what other options you have in your naming template, you can click on this icon to the right. And here we can see that we can add a counter, or we can just go ahead and add the parent alignment name. So I always like to take a look at the naming templates to see what options I have and let Civil 3D do some of the automation for me as far as namings are concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to that. Description is optional. Here it just shows this is the alignment that we're using, the PGL right alignment. Our sample line style, when you have the state kit installed, you'll have an FDOT sample line style set up for you. And basically it's just a red line. And then we have a sample line label style. Make sure you have the FDOT sample line label style set up, because what that does is that allows the label to update as you move the sample lines along the alignment. So it basically updates the stations in the label. The next what you want to do is to select the data sources to sample when you're creating your cross sections. So here you can see we have 4 data sources that are being sampled, and these data sources are being pulled from the corridor drawing. Okay, they're not being pulled from data shortcuts. They're actually looking at that corridor file that we used as an XREF. So for our first type here, we have an existing ground surface, and you can tell by the icons over here on the left what each one of these surfaces are. Our sources are. This existing ground surface, I want to come over here to the right here, and I want to set up the style for that. This is where you specify how that source is going to look like in your cross sections. So here we're going to choose FDOT existing and click OK. The next option here, this is our corridor. How does our corridor going to look in our cross section? So I'm going to click where it says standard. I'm going to go to my list here. I'm going to choose FDOT cross section. Click OK. And then we have a finished grade surface that's being generated from our corridor. And let's pick a style for that. I'm going to go to my list here and I'm going to choose FDOT proposed and click OK. Now our last option here is a datum surface that was generated from the corridor. I actually do not need that to show up in my cross sections. So here I'm going to uncheck for sample and turn that off. Just going down the list here, this shows the layer that these sources are going to be placed on. And then we have an update mode. Right now, they're all set to dynamic, and you want to make sure they stay to dynamic. If you change these to static and make a change to your corridor or your surface or anything, they will not update. So always make sure you have this on dynamic, so your cross sections will always be up to date with your model. So let's go ahead and click OK. And if you'll notice, we have this jig that moves along with our cursor. Well, right now Civil 3D is waiting for us to left click in the screen somewhere to specify where we want to place our sample line. But we're going to place our sample lines a little bit differently. If you'll notice up on the top here, we still have a toolbar available. And what this does, this kind of gives us some options as to how we want our sample lines named when they're being generated. So this is sample line, and we have a counter name. Again, we have an option here where you can click to edit the name template. Always look at your options. So here we can add a sample line group name, a sample line number, or the station value, or the raw station value. Again, I'm just going to leave it like it is. It's always good to see what options you have, though. Here is where we can choose if we wanted another alignment to use. Here is if we had different sample line groups. We can pick from this list here which ones we want to edit or change or add to. This box here is just another option we'd click on if we want to create another sample line group or edit group defaults or delete the current group. I'm not going to click on these yet because really we haven't created anything. But what I want to do is look at this next option on how our sample lines are going to be generated. Right now we have at station selected, so basically that just means that as I left click on the screen, it's going to manually create a cross section. But what I want to do here is I want to create my cross-section sample lines from corridor stations. And basically what that means is it's going to use the frequency lines in our corridor to create our sample lines. And you can see here in the corridor these lines that go from left to right, that's our frequency lines. So we want to create sample lines that lay right over the top of those lines. So I'm going to choose from corridor station. And the next box that comes up, I just have some additional settings. Here I can pick if I have what corridor I want to use. So we have multiple corridors in this drawing. I would pick from here. Right now I only have one, so that's the only one that's available. The station range, I want to go from the beginning of the corridor to the end of the corridor, so I'm going to leave those to true. And then I have a left swath width of 100 feet going to the left and 100 feet going to the right. So I'm just going to leave everything like it is and click OK. And then you'll see that these red lines are placed in our drawing on the frequency lines of the corridor. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is just press enter on the keyboard and accept those lines. It's going to go ahead and label them. And then I get an event viewer. We're going to go ahead and close this out. This is just notifications. It's not really a warning. So let's go through here and see how we can edit these sample lines once they're created. So if you want to delete a sample line, it's real simple. You just select the sample line and press delete, and it takes them out. So let's go ahead and delete some of these that we don't want in our file. Like I said, I'd like to keep the only ones that are every 50 feet. That's how I created my corridor. Okay. Now to modify a sample line, if you pick it, you'll notice that these grips show up, and you've got basically three types of grips. You've got the diamond in the middle, then you have an arrow, and you have a box. If you pick on the grip, that just lets you move the sample line up and down the alignment. So if I pick here, it'll move it, and you'll notice that the label will update. I'm going to go ahead and press U on the keyboard and press enter to put that back. Let me see if I can turn off that event viewer here real quick so you can keep it from popping up on the screen. Give me just a second here. Okay. So back to editing a sample line. When you pick the sample line and the grips come up, you'll also have an arrow on the right-hand side. If you pick that arrow, that just kind of lets you change the width of it. And you notice as I move it left to right, you'll see it on the dynamic toolbar tip, the distance that you're moving it. Well, if you press tab a few times, you can cycle through that dynamic input, and you can actually type in a distance and press enter, and it'll move it that distance that you type in. You can also pick on the grip and move it unorthogonal to the alignment. So if I place it up here and I'm going to put it back, I would go back and select that sample line again, right click, and I would choose make orthogonal, and it would place it back. Let me go ahead and stretch it out here a little bit. If you want to manipulate multiple sample lines at one time, what you would do is select each sample line that you want to change. You can either left click on each one, or you can use some kind of crossing window by left clicking once, left clicking again. And then if you select the shift key and go back and pick on each grip, notice how they turn red? Well, now you're making those grips hot or active. Okay, so go back, click on each one. I can release the shift key. Now if I pick on one, you can see how they all move at the same time. Okay, you can do that for the grips. You can also do that for the arrows as well. Actually, the arrows probably a little bit easier to use, so I don't have to change the angle of them. And then hold down the shift key, pick on each arrow, and then you can edit them all at one time. Okay. All right, so now that we have our sample lines created, let's go ahead and take a look at how we would create a section view. If we go to the Prospector tab, under Alignments, and we can expand the Centerline Alignments option, you can see for our PGL right, we have a little yellow flag. Basically, that means that there is an item that's consuming this alignment, or we have a child of this parent alignment that's being used. So if I expand that out, you can see that we have a sample line group in here now. And there's our sample line group PGL right. And if I expand this some more, this is our sample lines that we've created. Notice when I pick sample lines, it shows us a list of all the sample lines that we've created so far. If I pick one of these, I can use this as a way of kind of zooming in and out of my drawing to a specific station. So if I pick one, right click, I can say zoom to, and it'll take me to that sample line. Okay, so it's an efficient way of panning around your file. You'll also notice that under sections, this shows the sources that are being sampled so far for our section. So we have existing ground, our corridor, and our finished grade. We don't have our pipe networks in here yet, but we will momentarily. So let's look at how to create a section view. So there's a few different ways I can create section views. Either I can come down here under my panels and section views and create one view or multiple views, or I can pick the sample line itself, and you'll notice that the ribbon changes. Once the ribbon changes, I can come up here, I can say create a section view of that sample line. When you pick that, you notice that a box that comes up, and part of the box is already filled out for you based on what sample line you pick. So here it says that we pick station 96 plus 50. I'm not going to go through all the settings here just yet. We will when we create multiple views, but just real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a section view style. We'll say 20 horizontal, 10 vertical, and we'll click on Create Section View. Come out here in your drawing, I'm going to left click once, and that places my view in my drawing. If you accidentally place it over the model, what you can do is just use the Move command, pick the section view, and the whole view moves over to the side. Okay, you don't have to do a window select or anything. Just pick part of it, use the Move command, and move it over. Once you have that section view created, go back down here in your list, and you'll notice that there's been an individual section created. Okay, there's actually a category for it. Just pick it from the list here. You can right-click and choose Delete, and it takes it out of the drawing. Okay. Next, let's take a look at how to create multiple views. So again, under the Profile and Section Views panel, we're going to choose Create Multiple Views. And here we're going to go through the steps of the wizard creating multiple views. So the first step is our general step. You want to make sure you have the alignment selected, you have the right sample line group selected. Our range is automatic. We want to go from the very beginning to the very end. And then we have our section view names. Again, we have a naming template that you can pick on if you want to see what options you can add for property fields to the name. And then we have a section view style. I'm going to go down the list here, and we just want to make sure that we have FDOT 20, horizontal 10 selected. I don't want the grid on in this case. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And this is the section placement. This is where you pick the cross-section sheet that has your title block and everything in it that you're going to frame up your cross-sections in. So for here, you want to make sure that you're pointing at the 2016 Civil 3D State Kit in the data folder, templates, sheets, roadways. And then we have SHXSC, which is sheet cross-sections, and we're going to use the 20 horizontal, 10 vertical. If you don't have that picked, you can click on the little dice over here on the right, and what that'll do is that'll let you browse to that sheet. And here you have a list of layouts to pick from. Basically, these layouts are named according to the viewport scale that's being used for each cross-section. Okay, so that's where these names are coming from. They're coming from the name of the layouts in this sheet. So I'm going to choose a 20 horizontal, 10 vertical, click OK. And then we have a group plot style. What the group plot style does is that tells our cross-sections the distance to space themselves from one another in an X and Y direction. Okay, I've gotten calls before saying that it'd be nice if in this group plot style that we had a grid that was turned on that would aid us in labeling our cross-sections. So what I would recommend is if you want a grid turned on, take this FDOT group plot, come over here to the right, and we're going to say copy that current selection, and I'm going to create a new one called Grid On. So on the Information tab, in the name, I'm going to call this Grid On. And then under Display, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the major horizontal and vertical grids. Okay, and I'll go back and show you how to change this style to the other style that does not have a grid turned on it. Okay, so go ahead and click OK to that. So we now have an FDOT group plot Grid On. Click Next. Offset range, I'm just going to leave this at automatic for left and right. The right's going to show varied because we did alter some of our sample lines, so that's why it says varied. Our elevation range varies from minimum maximum. Go ahead and leave that to automatic. Click Next. Here, this shows our sections that are going to be drawn. Just kind of make sure that when you're in this dialog box that your styles are still set to where they were when you created your sample lines. So just make sure this says existing for existing grade, our FDOT cross sections for our corridor that's being sampled, and our FDOT proposed style for our finished grade surface. Click Next. This is for our FDOT page plot. We can leave that as it is, and then finally we're just going to say create section views. The last step is to pick a space in your model space that's far away from your project so your cross sections do not lay over the top of it, and then just left click and that will create your section views. Now, I did this on purpose. If you zoom in and look, you'll see that a lot of these cross sections are laying on top of one another. Well, that's because we chose a different scale than what we're actually using for our annotation scale. So I just kind of want to show you how to fix this real quick. Come down the bottom here, and you're going to choose a 1 inch equals 20, which is what the scale should have been set to in the first place. And then we want to update this view. Okay, so I'm going to pick one of these cross-section views, and up on top you'll notice that the ribbon changed. I want to choose Update Group Layout. And I'm going to window these cross-sections in the view, right-click, and then you can see that now the cross-sections look a lot better. We have probably about 4 cross-sections to each view. You'll also notice that we have a grid that's turned on. This is when we created that FDOT group plot Grid On style. Okay. To go back and turn this off, if you choose not to have this on, what we're going to do is go back to the Prospector tab, under Sample Line Groups, choose your sample line group, right-click, go to Properties, and then under the Section Views tab, under Group Plot Style, we can just change this back to our FDOT Group Plot. Okay, click OK to that, click OK again, and then let our drawing update, and we'll go ahead and turn that grid off. All right, so the next thing what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start adding in our pipe network to our cross sections. So let me kind of roll some of this up to clean up our prospector here a little bit. And if I go down to data shortcuts, you'll notice that right now we do not have any pipe networks in our data shortcut. So let's place a pipe network in there. So I'm going to save my file. Let's click open. Use my little shortcut here. I'm going to go to the drainage folder, and I've got a pipe network file already set up. I'll click open. All right, so once that file is up, what I want to do is go ahead and associate this drawing to the project if you haven't already. So again, I'm just going to pick the data shortcut link, right click on it, associate project to current drawing, make sure that you have the right project selected, click OK. Again, up on the top you can see the project number in brackets, letting you know that this drawing now associated to the project. Let me save my file again. And then here under the pipe networks category, you can see that we do have a proposed drainage pipe network created. And you can kind of see through the drawing here what that network looks like. So the next thing what I want to do is share that pipe network into our data shortcuts. So I'm going to right click on data shortcuts, say create data shortcuts, and Civil 3D examines the drawing and it looks to see what type of objects can be placed in our data shortcuts. So I have some profiles in there, but really the only thing I'm interested in is the pipe network. So I'm just going to place a check in that pipe networks category. You can see the status of it is to be added. So the final step is to click OK. And now in our pipe networks, you can see that we now have a proposed drainage in our data shortcuts. So from here, I can just simply close this drawing and we're done with it for now. It's going to prompt me to save changes. I'm going to click yes. And this should bring me back to my cross-section file. So back in our cross-sections, you can see that we do not have any pipe networks in this file. So what I want to do is go back down to my proposed drainage. I'm going to right-click on it and create a reference to it. Just kind of work your way down the list for creating a pipe network reference. You want to make sure that for your network part list, you have the right part list selected. So here we have FDOT drainage is what I'm going to pick. I don't need to override any reference, reference to the surfaces or to the alignments or anything. If you wanted to include labels when you bring them in, you could come down the list here, and for our structure label style, you might pick FDOT structure plan, and for our pipe label style, we'll go down the list here and we'll choose FDOT pipe plan, and then click OK. And then just a second here, I'll zoom out to the model and we'll take a look at the pipe network. So you can see that we do now have a pipe network in our file that is being referenced in through data shortcuts. Next thing we want to do is we want our sample lines now to recognize that pipe network. So we need to sample more sources. So I'm going to go to, let's go ahead and zoom into my cross section so you can see this happen. I'm going to go back to my alignments, go down to my pipe network, or I'm sorry, my sample line group. I'm going to go to properties, and then I'm going to go to the sections tab, and on the right here you'll see where it says sample more sources. I'm going to click that, and then under sources you can see that this is where we're going to find our proposed drainage pipe network. And I'm just going to click add to add it to our currently sampled sources. Okay, and there's not really any style or anything else that you have to set up for it. Just simply click OK, and then we'll click OK again, and you'll see your cross sections regenerate, and now you'll see that we actually have our pipes going through our cross sections. The next step, what I want to do is I want to show cross sections where I have structures at. Okay, so I want to create some additional sample lines that strike through my structures and my pipe to show up in my cross sections here. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of cheat here for the sake of time. I'm going to bring in a drawing that has some polylines in it. We're going to convert those polylines to sample lines. So I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon, and I'm going to choose the Insert option under the block category. I'm going to choose more options and then browse. I'm going to browse to a drawing. I have a drawing here called Sample Lines Layout, and right now it's currently a block. Click Open. When that block is inserted into our drawing, we want to go ahead and explode them. We don't want it to be a block anymore. We actually want it to be individual polylines. Okay, so it's just takes an extra step out of having to do it manually. As far as anything else, we want to make sure that everything else is unchecked. We don't want to change the insertion point, scale, rotation. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. Once I do that, you will now see that we do have polylines in our drawings represented by these green lines going through our structures in our pipe network. Okay. So the next step is to convert these polylines to sample lines. So the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and pick one of your sample lines. Again, you'll see that the context ribbon changes, and we can choose this Edit Sample Line option. Now, one more step you have to take is in the Sample Lines tools, it doesn't know what sample line group you're trying to edit at the moment. So go ahead and pick the sample line again, and it'll put that sample line group in the name, in the dialog box. So here we want to go back to our list, and we're going to choose Select Existing Polylines. Okay, and we have a pick box. Our cursor changes to a pick box. I'm going to go down my drawing here. I'm going to pick each one of these polylines that I want to convert to a sample line. So I'm just panning down my drawing, making sure I don't miss any of them. Okay. When you get to the final one, just right-click. Right-click means enter. It's like pressing enter. And then right-click again, and that should end the command. And you'll notice that there's now a sample line that's placed on top of that polyline, along with a label for your new sample line. It did leave the polylines behind, so I like to kind of go back and make sure that I clean up my drawing. I don't leave any unnecessary items behind. So if I bring my cursor over this sample line, you'll see a little glyph that shows up. That lets me know that there's two objects that are laying on top of each other. If I pick that sample line, Civil 3D is letting me know that there's a sample line there and a polyline. And you kind of see when you move your cursor up or down how it changes. I want to pick the polyline, and I'm going to right-click one more time, and I want to say select all the similar polylines that are in that drawing. And if you zoom out, you can kind of see that now all the polylines are picked. And then just press delete on the keyboard, and that's the quickest way of getting rid of all those extra polylines. Now if you zoom in, you'll notice that our cross sections haven't changed yet. So what we have to do actually is rebuild our section views, our multiple section views. Okay, Civil 3D doesn't shuffle the deck and add those new cross sections in here. If you have any labels or anything in your cross sections, what I recommend is kind of drawing a line for a base point or a point that we know we can go back and pick to create our new views from. Okay, so I'm just going to place just a reference line there. I'm going to go back over here to my sample lines. To my section view group, and I can either right-click and choose delete from here, or I can just window them all together and delete them. I don't really think it matters. So I'm going to choose delete. It deletes them from there, and then we have to go back and rebuild our section views. So I'm going to go back to the Home tab. Under the Profile and Section Views panel, under Section Views, we're going to create multiple views again, and just kind of all your settings should still be the same the last time you went through this wizard. So I'm just going to click Next just to verify that everything looks good. They should all be the same. Or you can just take the shortcut and just say Create Section Views. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and right-click on my mouse for Endpoint, and then pick that line again and let it recreate my section views. So now if you zoom in here, you can see our new section views that have been added that show our structures and our pipes cutting through our sections. So just real quick, we only got a few minutes here. What I want to do is just kind of show you quickly how you can place some labels on here, and then we're going to create some sheets. So let me go back up here and click Save. And then we're going to go to our annotation ribbon. And I like to click on the big button for Add Labels, because what that does is that brings up a dialog box that kind of lets me filter out what I want to label. So for our feature, we're going to go through the list here, and we're going to choose Pipe Network. And then for our label type, we're going to label a single part and a section view. and then you're going to pick your pipe labels and your structure labels. So here I'm just going to go to my pipe labels. I'm going to say from structure left, and I have a from structure right, and I'll show you what the difference is between those two. And just simply click on add, and you're going to go over here and you're going to pick your pipe, and you can see that it adds a from and to label styles showing the structure that it's coming from and going to. That's the left one, and then I have one for the right that you can go back, and it just kind of does a right justification. I'm going to click close to this, and the reason why we have a left and a right is because if you go back and pick this label, and you see the little diamond that comes up, drag that diamond out and you have a leader line. But that leader line has got a left justification to it. So you can bring it up on top or bottom. We'll left click to place it there, and this one has a right justification to it. And I'll do the same thing. I'll select that little diamond, and maybe we'll just kind of move it down here for now. Okay, so that's how you add a label. Next, let's go ahead and look at how we're going to create our sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that line there, do a little house cleaning, save my file again, and we're going to go to the output ribbon, and under the plan production category we have create section sheets. When that comes up, it's just one dialog box. It's very simple. It's not really a wizard or anything. Just kind of confirm some of your settings. Make sure that you have the right alignment selected, you have the right sample line group selected, and the right section view group selected. Here you're going to give it a layout name. That's actually the title of your sheets. I'm going to call this drainage structures. Actually, let's call this drainage sections. And then it's going to add it to a sheet set. We want to add this to an existing sheet set. So I'm going to click on the dice there, and we're going to go to our project again. I'm going to go press R for roadway, and in the engineering data folder we have our plan set DST file. I'm going to click open to that, and then when we're going to say create sheets, we're not creating new drawings, we're actually importing in those layouts that we specified when we created our section views. Okay, so we're going to say create sheets. It's going to go ahead and save our drawing for us. Click OK. And then on the bottom here, you should see a series of tabs start to appear for each one of our section views. You'll also notice our sheet set manager comes up with our section view group in it. And these are our drainage structure, our drainage sections layout tabs. If you double click on one, it'll take you to that layout tab in your file. And you can see as we zoom down here on the bottom, there's our drainage sections name, and it pulls the information from the DST file that's in our project and fills some of this information out for us. What we also want to do is take these files, or these sheets, and move them from the section view subgroup category to our roadway plans category. So I'm just going to left click and drag that up to the top for roadway plans. Doing this on GoToMeeting, sometimes it's a little iffy. There you go. I still don't think I got it. Let me try one more time. Yeah, I don't think it's one to catch. Every time I do this on a GoToMeeting, I don't know if it has to do something with the resolution that's being used or what, but I always have kind of a little difficulty getting it under the roadway plans category. All right, so with that said, that pretty much so ends today's webinar on FDOT plan production, drainage sections and profiles. I'm sorry, not profile, just drainage sections in Civil 3D. I've got information here to download the state kit, or a link to download the state kit. I also have a QR code that if you take a picture with your camera, that'll enter in contact information automatically into your smartphone device, so you don't have to type any of that in.